In the year 1847, amidst the towering pines of Oregon, the solitary lumberjack Jonas Whitmore parted with $50. Believing he was merely extending a lifeline to a desperate father's daughter, a woman in dire need of sanctuary. Yet Sarah harbored a secret within her womb, one that would fulfill 17 years of his hushed prayers to the majestic pine sif. They might endure the winter that loomed, poised to obliterate all he had never dared to dream of. Jonas Whitmore's axe sank deep into the massive pine, sending a flurry of wood chips swirling around his perspiring visage like a swarm of agitated wasps. The sound reverberated through the Oregon mountains, reminiscent of thunder, yet no response came. Once more, as had been the case each morning for the past 3 years, since he had constructed his cabin in these solitary woods, the year was 1847, and the Oregon Territory sprawled wild and boundless in every direction. Many men arrived with their families, harboring dreams of farms and visions of children frolicking through golden wheat fields. Jonas arrived by himself. He remained in solitude, and each night he pondered whether the divine had erased his name from memory. Steam curled gracefully from his coffee cup as he took a moment to gather his thoughts. Before long, the other loggers from camp would make their entrance, animatedly discussing their wives' culinary skills and the delightful milestones of their little ones. Jonas would listen, smile, and feign that their tales didn't pierce his heart like daggers. He had mastered the art of concealing his solitude with humor and relentless effort. Yet the trees were aware of the reality. They listened as he conversed with himself, murmuring prayers for the one he longed to share his uncomplicated existence with. The logging camp thrummed with energy as workers readied their equipment. Jonas observed them from the periphery of his vision, his focus divided as he meticulously honed his blade. Big Tom McCarthy voiced his discontent regarding his wife's newly acquired curtains. Young Pete proudly recounted the joy of teaching his son the art of whittling. Even the cantankerous Henrik couldn't help but smile at the thought of his daughter's letters from back east. "Morning, Jonas," called out Frank Muller, the camp cook. "Will you be gracing us with your presence for Sunday dinner this week?" "Martha is preparing her renowned apple pie." Jonas was compelled to smile. "I appreciate it, Frank, but I have some tasks that require my attention." The same old excuse yet again. In truth, being at Frank's table, encircled by the joyous laughter of his family, was a more disheartening experience than dining in solitude. In the solitude of his cabin, he could at least feign a choice in the stillness that enveloped him. The labor was arduous, yet sincere. Every tree succumbed precisely to Jonas's design, a testament to his expertise honed through countless hours of dedication and an innate gift. The other men held a deep respect for his skills, even if they could not comprehend his decision to embrace a life of solitude. Thomas Brennan, the camp foreman, frequently remarked that Jonas possessed the ability to interpret trees as effortlessly as others peruse the pages of a book. Yet the trees remained silent in their steadfastness. The trees offered no laughter for your jokes, nor did they grasp your hand through the tempests. The empty chair across from your dinner table remained unfilled by trees. As the sun ascended in the sky, Jonas felt an urgency to labor with greater speed and intensity, striving to escape the relentless thoughts that inevitably pursued him. Sweat trickled into his eyes and his muscles screamed in protest, yet the physical torment seemed a mere whisper compared to the persistent ache in his chest that lingered, unyielding and relentless. In the midst of the lunch break, he found himself seated away from the group, consuming his simple fare of bread and dried meat, while they engaged in lively exchanges of stories and tobacco. Their voices intertwined in a soothing melody, evoking memories of church services from his youth, a time when he held the conviction that prayers were answered in unmistakable ways. "You know, Jonas," said Pete, meandering over with his sandwich in hand, "there's a new family that has moved to town. I have 3 daughters, each one as lovely as the blossoms of spring. Perhaps you ought to consider it. I am perfectly content with my current state." Jonas interrupted him, though not with any severity. Pete had good intentions. All of them had, yet Jonas had ventured into the realm of courtship previously in Pennsylvania. The women cast fleeting glances at his calloused hands, then swiftly sought refuge in the arms of more polished suitors, those who whispered of simpler, more comfortable existences. The afternoon unfolded in a cadence of chop pause, chop pause. With every swing of his axe, the rhythm of his heart echoed, a steady and powerful cadence, yet ultimately solitary. Other men toiled in pairs, exchanging words as they engaged in their work. Jonas found solace in the depths of his own mind, even as shadows occasionally crept into his reflections. As the evening shadows elongated between the trees, Jonas gathered his tools and made his way homeward. His cabin nestled in a clearing he had hewn from the wild, modest yet resilient, with glass windows that captured the fading glow of dusk. Smoke spiraled from the chimney where he had stoked the morning fire, and for a fleeting moment he could nearly convince himself that someone awaited him within. Yet the facade crumbled the moment he swung the door ajar, revealing a solitary plate resting on the table, a lone chair positioned by the flickering fire, and a single pillow atop the bed he had crafted, spacious enough for two, should the whisper of hope ever choose to take residence. He ignited the oil lamp, setting the scene for his modest evening meal of beans, bacon, and bread. The food was decent, yet the solitude rendered each bite devoid of its true essence. He had attempted to immerse himself in books during meals, yet the stories only served as a poignant reminder that even the characters within their pages enjoyed more companionship than he could ever hope for. Once dinner had concluded, Jonas settled beside the flickering flames and retrieved his whittling knife. Shaping wood brought a serene stillness to his turbulent thoughts, and he had honed his skills in crafting delicate creatures in ornate containers. This evening he toiled over a diminutive cradle, scarcely larger than his hand. He reassured himself that it was merely a rehearsal, yet deep down, his heart understood the truth. The wind surged outside, shaking the windows and sighing through the pine branches like a melancholic melody. Jonas placed another log onto the fire, his gaze fixed on the flickering flames as they swirled and twirled in a mesmerizing display. At times he engaged in conversation with the flames, sharing the details of his day, his aspirations, and his anxieties. The fire, with its crackling responses, proved to be an attentive listener, never passing judgment on his foolishness. Before retiring for the night, Jonas found himself kneeling before the humble wooden cross affixed to the wall. Over the years, his prayers had dwindled in length, eroded by a silence that seemed impenetrably dense. "Lord," he murmured, "I seek not much, merely a companion to traverse this life alongside, someone who might perceive my tranquil nature as soothing rather than peculiar. My heart and home are open, ready to embrace a family. Should you deem it appropriate to direct one in my direction." The cross remained silent. The cabin enveloped him, its familiar creaks and sighs echoing in the stillness. In the stillness of the night, an owl hooted softly to its companion, and from afar, a response echoed through the darkness. Jonas extinguished the lamp's glow and nestled into bed, drawing the quilts his mother had lovingly crafted over his shoulders. Tomorrow would usher in an abundance of trees, a continuation of labor, and evenings that mirror this one perfectly. Yet, perhaps, just perhaps, the morrow could unveil something new. He shut his eyes and attuned himself to the whispering wind, envisioning it lifting prayers to the heavens amidst the majestic pines. "Warm, crusty loaves await you. Come and indulge in the aroma of freshly baked bread." The voice pierced the air of Portland's Saturday market with the clarity of a church bell, causing Jonas to nearly fumble his bag of nails. He had arrived in town to gather supplies, coffee, flour, the essential items that sustained him in his mountain cabin. Yet there was an unmistakable shift in the atmosphere of the bustling marketplace today, a palpable energy that sent tingles across his skin, infused with an unusual sense of anticipation. The wagons groaned as they traversed the muddy thoroughfares, while horses pawed the ground and snorted, their breath visible in the brisk autumn air. Little ones flitted through the throng of grown-ups, pursuing the chickens that had broken free from their confines. Women in worn dresses bartered for the price of vegetables, while men engaged in discussions about lumber contracts and the forecasts of the weather. Jonas often rushed through these excursions, feeling uneasy amidst the throngs of people after weeks spent in solitude. Today he ambled along, taking in the expressions of those around him, eavesdropping on dialogues that held no relevance to his own life. "Sarah, come here at once." The terse command prompted Jonas to glance at a time-worn wagon stationed beside the feed store. A slender figure with untamed gray locks seized a young woman's arm, pulling her sharply to his side. From a distance of 30 feet, Jonas could discern the bruises marring her wrist, the tension in her shoulders betraying the weight of the pain she bore. The young woman, perhaps 17 or 18, remained utterly motionless as her father meticulously organized the belongings in their wagon. Her dress, once vibrant like the azure expanse of a summer sky, now appeared faded and mended. Her chestnut locks cascaded in an unpretentious braid along her spine, and amidst the surrounding turmoil, she glided with a serene grace that evoked memories of the deer he occasionally spotted in the tranquil glades of the forest. "Pardon me, sir," a voice called out from behind him. Jonas glanced down to see a young boy, perhaps around 10, pulling at the sleeve of his coat. "This has been dropped by you." Jonas gazed at the paper bag clutched in the child's hand. Cheese and coffee beans lay strewn across the muddy earth. He must have gazed at the wagon for a time that stretched beyond his awareness. "I appreciate it, my dear son." Jonas retrieved a penny from the depths of his pocket and offered it to the boy, who beamed with delight before darting off toward the candy vendor. As Jonas cast his gaze back toward the wagon, he noticed the thin man engaged in conversation with a small gathering of intrigued onlookers. His voice resonated through the market square, and the words that reached Jonas sent a chill spiraling through his stomach. "She is an exceptional worker, as strong as any man, and possesses a keen understanding of kitchen responsibilities," William McKenna shouted, his fingers firmly clasping his daughter's elbow. At 17, vibrant and full of life, poised for marriage to any man wise enough to recognize a true opportunity. The audience whispered and fidgeted restlessly. A few women turned their heads in disapproval and hurriedly departed. A handful of men approached, scrutinizing Sarah as one would assess a horse prior to a sale. Jonas observed her complexion drain of color, yet she held her head high, determined not to reveal any trace of fear, even as her father persisted with his dreadful sales pitch. McKenna announced that the starting bid is set at $40. "However, I would accept 50 from the right individual, one capable of offering the appropriate attention for items in disrepair. Imperfect wares." The word struck Jonas with the force of a tangible impact. He observed the fleeting moment as Sarah's expression faltered, only to be swiftly replaced by a resolute facade, igniting a blaze within his chest. In his 34 years, Jonas had witnessed enough cruelty to identify desperation when it confronted him. McKenna's garments draped loosely over his form, and his hands trembled ever so slightly, evidence of a man who had forfeited all to the vices of gambling or drink, or perhaps a cruel combination of both. Yet the most harrowing act of all was the betrayal of his own daughter, that traversed boundaries Jonas had never realized were there. "I require the funds today," McKenna pressed on, his tone escalating in urgency as prospective buyers slipped further from reach. "The chill of winter approaches, and my debts linger, refusing to be postponed until the thaw of spring." At last, Sarah found her voice, a whisper struggling to rise above the clamor of the bustling market. "Father, I implore you, there must be an alternative." McKenna's expression contorted into a blend of shame, anger, and unyielding pride. "Do not begin this with me, young lady. This is as much your fault as it is mine. Had you exercised greater caution and humility, perhaps we could have avoided this predicament." Jonas was perplexed by McKenna's meaning, yet he observed the way the words struck Sarah, landing upon her like sharp blows. Her face shifted from white to red, finally resting in the pale acceptance of one who had ceased to battle the unwinnable. The throng started to disperse as the event faded in its allure. A small group of men hovered nearby, their hushed voices weaving a tapestry of intrigue as they shot glances at Sarah that ignited a fire in Jonas's fists. He recognized the kind of men who perceived vulnerability as an invitation to exploit. $45, a voice emerged from the rear of the dwindling assembly. Jonas glanced over to find Bill Hutchins, a ranch hand notorious for his fierce disposition and harsh treatment of the creatures in his care. "That seems reasonable for someone with a dubious reputation." McKenna's eyes sparkled with a fervent yearning. 50 would finalize the agreement, Mr. Hutchins. She is truly invaluable." Jonas observed the expression on Sarah's face as her father bargained over her future with a man whose gaze treated her as if she were mere cattle. Her green eyes searched for his amidst the throng, and in that fleeting instant, he perceived a depth within her gaze that stirred his heart. Not merely fear or sorrow, but a profound loneliness that resonated with his own. In a moment of instinct, Jonas advanced. $60. All eyes were drawn to him. McKenna's eyebrows arched in surprise. Hutchins glowered, ejecting a stream of tobacco juice into the muck beneath him. Sarah gazed at Jonas, her expression a mix of astonishment and a flicker of what could only be described as hope. 60, McKenna echoed, as though he were struggling to grasp the fortune that had befallen him. Indeed, that is quite a substantial proposition. Do you happen to have that cash on you, sir? Jonas extracted his leather wallet, counting the bills with a slow, deliberate precision. The funds embodied months of meticulous saving, his aspirations for enhancing the cabin, and perhaps acquiring a superior horse. Yet, as Jonas gazed upon Sarah's expression, noting her unwavering posture amidst the chaos surrounding them, he realized he had discovered something far more valuable than mere comfort or security. $60, he reiterated with conviction. However, it is not available for purchase. If the lady consents, then for marriage. This is not a comforting suggestion. Whispers of anticipation rippled through the crowd. This surpassed their expectations for entertainment on an ordinary market day. McKenna's face reflected a tumultuous battle between confusion and greed, while Sarah's expression transformed from shock to an inscrutable emotion that Jonas found difficult to decipher. Well, my dear, McKenna insisted, this gentleman is proposing marriage to you while I am offering compensation for your care throughout these years. What is your response? Jonas moved in, disregarding McKenna, and directed his words solely at Sarah. Allow me to introduce myself. I am Jonas Whitmore. I reside in solitude within a cabin nestled close to the logging camps. While it may not be extravagant, it is sincere labor and a respectable place to call home. I have no intention of purchasing you. I'm inquiring if you might entertain the idea of embarking on a shared journey through life with me. Sarah gazed into his eyes, lingering in the silence, seeking the elusive truth that Jonas yearned for her to discover. As she spoke, her voice resonated with a steady clarity. Indeed, Mr. Whitmore, I shall become your wife. The words lingered in the space between them, forming an invisible bridge. Neither had anticipated the encounter, uniting two solitary spirits amidst the bustling marketplace, where miracles often wore the guise of dire situations. For the first time in 2 decades, the aroma of freshly baked bread enveloped Jonas's cabin. Sarah lingered at the weathered wooden table, her hands dusted with a fine layer of flour. She appeared transformed from the way she had been just 3 days prior at the market. The fear in her eyes began to dissipate, giving way to an emotion Jonas struggled to identify. You don't have to do all this work, Jonas said, hanging his coat on the wooden peg by the door. His boots trailed muddy imprints across the floor, yet Sarah appeared unfazed. I want to help, she replied, her gaze fixed on the dough beneath her hands as she kneaded it with purpose. It's the bare minimum I can offer. Jonas observed her as she immersed herself in her task. Her movements were swift and confident, as if she had kneaded dough 1,000 times prior. He pondered the unspoken talents her father had chosen to keep in the shadows. The man spoke of Sarah as if she were a horse up for sale, merely reciting the most rudimentary details. The flames flickered in the rugged stone hearth, creating a ballet of shadows that swirled across the cabin's walls. Outside, the wind intensified, causing the pine trees to sway and groan in response. The chill of winter approached sooner than expected this year. Jonas sensed it deep within his very being. Sarah, he said with a measured tone, we need to discuss what comes next. Her hands fell still. She remained motionless, her gaze fixed upon the bread dough. Jonas observed her diminutive form within the confines of his cabin, reminiscent of a fragile bird that had ventured in from the chill, hesitating to determine if it was truly safe to settle. Could you clarify what you mean? She inquired. I'm referring to our relationship, to the nature of this agreement. Jonas took a seat at the table, positioning himself directly across from her. Your father struck this deal without considering your desires. If you wish to venture elsewhere, I am here to assist you. I have a bit of savings tucked away. At last, Sarah turned her gaze toward him. Her emerald eyes shimmered with the weight of unfallen tears. To what destination shall I venture? I find myself alone, with only one exception. She fell silent, her gaze drifting elsewhere. What, if anything, is excluded? Her silence stretched on, leading Jonas to wonder if she would ever respond. The bread dough lingered, neglected yet hopeful, as it slowly swelled in the embrace of the warm cabin air. I have something to share, Sarah murmured, her voice trembling with apprehension. But I'm scared you'll cast me aside once you know. Jonas inclined his body, eager to engage. I shall not bid you farewell. No matter the challenge, we shall navigate it side by side. With trembling hands, Sarah carefully wiped the flour from her fingers using a damp cloth. She approached the window, her gaze fixed on the encroaching shadows of the forest beyond. Jonas beheld her reflection in the glass, ethereal and wavering. My father spoke the truth when he declared my strength. She started, I've been tending to our farm since I was 12. I possess the skills to cook, clean, mend garments, and care for animals. I possess the knowledge to create remedies from nature's bounty. I possess a proficiency in reading and writing that surpasses that of many men in this town. Those are all good things, Jonas said softly. What reason could there possibly be for me to send you away? There is so much more to uncover. Sarah averted her gaze from the window. There exists a truth he withheld from you, a revelation that drove him to such lengths to cast me aside. Jonas lingered in anticipation. He discovered that urging Sarah to speak only caused her to withdraw deeper into her own thoughts. I'm going to have a baby, she exclaimed, her words tumbling out in a hurried breath, as if the speed of her confession could somehow lighten the weight of the news. The words struck Jonas with the force of a crashing tree. He reclined in his chair, grappling with the weight of her words. A tiny infant. Sarah was expecting a child. What is the duration, he inquired. Perhaps 3 months, or possibly 4. I find myself uncertain. Sarah's voice drifted softly, almost lost in the air. That is precisely why my father was so keen to seek out someone to take me in. He claimed that no man would desire a woman who bore another man's child. Jonas rose from his seat and made his way to the flickering fireplace. He gazed into the flickering flames, attempting to untangle the web of his thoughts. Sarah found herself with child. That altered the course of everything, or perhaps it did not. He reflected on the countless nights spent in solitude within this cabin, beseeching the heavens for a family to call his own. He envisioned a partner who would cherish him, offspring who would refer to him as Dad. He had never envisioned that it would unfold in this manner. Was it a person dear to your heart? Jonas inquired, his gaze fixed on the flickering flames. No, the word emerged with a piercing sharpness and a lingering bitterness. It was not a choice of my own. In that moment, clarity washed over Jonas. Sarah was not merely a commodity exchanged by her father. Someone had caused her pain, and her father had placed the blame squarely on her shoulders. The thought ignited a fury within him, surging like steam from a pot on the verge of boiling over. He glanced over his shoulder at Sarah. She lingered by the table, her arms encircling herself, anticipating his command to depart. Her youthful visage, tinged with fear, tugged at Jonas's heart, causing it to fracture ever so slightly. Are you interested in this little one? He inquired. Sarah's eyes grew wide with astonishment. What is this? Do you desire the baby? She paused in silence, lost in thought. Fear had gripped me initially. Indeed, I believe I do. The circumstances of its existence are not the baby's doing. Jonas inclined his head in agreement. Then we shall find a way to make it succeed. Are you saying that you won't be sending me away? Sarah, I have spent the last 15 years in solitude within this cabin. Each night I find myself in prayer, asking God to bless me with a family. Perhaps this isn't the way I envisioned it unfolding. Yet he hesitated, surveying the cabin that now seemed less desolate. Perhaps the divine operates through methods that elude our comprehension. In that moment, Sarah's tears flowed freely, not the subdued drop she had managed to contain, but deep, wrenching sobs that convulsed her entire being. Jonas approached her and gently wrapped his arms around her, as if she were fragile and delicate, like glass. Everything will be fine, he assured. Together, we shall unravel this mystery. Yet, what will others think? What might their thoughts be? Allow them to form their own opinions. This is our existence, not theirs. Sarah withdrew slightly, her gaze fixed upon him. Do you truly mean that? I do indeed. Jonas was taken aback by the conviction in his own voice. This child will require a paternal figure. Though I may not share the same blood, I can embody the role of a father in every meaningful sense that truly counts. At long last, after all their encounters, Sarah's lips curled into a smile. It was diminutive and hesitant, yet it held authenticity. What shall we do next? She inquired. Jonas surveyed the cabin, perceiving it through a fresh lens. Changes would be necessary. A crib, garments for the little one, essentials for the cold season. They would have to ready themselves for a birth amidst the untamed wilderness, distant from the aid of doctors or midwives. It is time to prepare, he declared. As winter approaches, the arrival of little ones remains unbound by the constraints of timing. Outside, the wind wailed through the pine trees, yet within the cabin, an unmistakable change had taken place. The stillness that had long enveloped Jonas's home was at last shattered, giving way to the voices of two individuals charting a future neither had anticipated discovering. As Jonas split wood behind the cabin, a delicate snowflake landed softly on his nose. He cast his gaze toward the overcast October sky, muttering a curse beneath his breath. The chill of winter approached with an unexpected urgency, arriving 6 weeks ahead of schedule, and they found themselves unprepared. Within the cozy confines of the cabin, Sarah found herself immersed in the art of using Jonas's mother's vintage sewing machine. The unyielding cadence of the needle had transformed into the melody of their existence. As she toiled to craft garments diminutive enough for an infant, her belly had swelled, round and firm, a presence that could no longer be concealed even beneath the flow of her loosest dress. "Jonas," Sarah's voice echoed from within, urging him to hurry. He cast aside his axe and sprinted toward the cabin, his heart racing with urgency. For the past week, Sarah had been experiencing intermittent pains. The closest physician lay a 3-day journey distant, provided the weather remained favorable. In the snow, it could very well be a landscape from the moon. Yet, as he burst through the door, he found Sarah smiling. She lingered by the window, one hand resting gently on her belly. "Feel this," she said, extending her hand toward him. Jonas allowed her to lead his hand to the curve of her abdomen. Initially, he experienced a void of sensation. Then, out of nowhere, a gentle nudge pressed against his hand, reminiscent of a soft knock, echoing from within a closed door. "The baby's moving," Sarah said, her eyes sparkling with awe. Jonas gazed at his hand resting on her belly, filled with wonder. In all his visions of family life, he had never envisioned this moment, experiencing the gentle stirrings of a baby before its arrival. It rendered everything more tangible in a way. "Is there pain involved?" he inquired. "No, it's delightful, akin to engaging in a clandestine dialogue that exists solely for my ears." They lingered side by side, anticipating the baby's next movement. As it happened, Jonas erupted into laughter, a sound that had long been absent from his life. Yet, their elation was abruptly shattered by the distant clatter of hooves echoing from outside. Jonas gazed out the window, his eyes catching sight of 3 men on horseback, making their way toward the cabin. He identified them, Tom Bradley, Pete Morrison, and Jake Williams, familiar faces from the logging camp. They bore expressions of gravity, their faces devoid of any smiles. "Stay inside," Jonas instructed Sarah. He emerged onto the porch, gently shutting the door behind him. "Good afternoon, gentlemen," he remarked. "What has drawn you to this place?" Tom Bradley, the eldest of the trio, cleared his throat. "It is imperative that we have a conversation, Jonas. A few of the men are expressing their concerns. What sort of worries do you have regarding your circumstances here?" Bradley gestured toward the cabin with a nod. "Whispers are circulating throughout the town regarding your wife's situation." Jonas sensed a tension grip his jaw. "What concern is it of yours or anyone else's?" "Listen, Jonas, you possess commendable work ethic. We all hold you in high regard, yet there are whispers among some of the wives in town. It has been suggested that it appears off. You are marrying a girl who was already expecting when you first crossed paths with her." Pete Morrison raised his voice. "Mrs. Henderson at the general store believes that respectable individuals ought to refrain from mingling with those who do not adhere to appropriate Christian conduct." "What precisely do you propose?" Jonas inquired, his tone unsettlingly hushed. "Perhaps it would be wise for you to seek alternative accommodations," Jake Williams suggested, "at least until the baby arrives and circumstances stabilize." Jonas surveyed each man in succession. For years, he had toiled in the company of these men. 2 summers ago, he had been the one to save Pete Morrison's life when a tree unexpectedly toppled in the wrong direction. He had extended a helping hand to Tom Bradley, offering financial support even while his own wife battled illness. And now they stood before him, insisting he depart due to the opinions of others. "No," Jonas replied with a quiet finality. Bradley appeared taken aback. "I have no intention of leaving. This is my domain, my refuge, my partner. If anyone in town has an issue with that, they are welcome to address it with me personally." "Jonas, please exercise some reason," Morrison commenced. "I apologize for the interruption, but if this tale has captured your interest, I invite you to subscribe to our channel, ensuring you can indulge in many more stories like this one in the future. Additionally, Feel free to express your appreciation for the video and share your insights in the comments section. Now immerse yourself in the continuation of the tale. I am being reasonable, Morrison stated. It is utterly unreasonable for adult men to come here and dictate how I should live my life, relying solely on hearsay from individuals who are completely unaware of my circumstances. The three men shared a glance, their eyes conveying unspoken thoughts. Jonas observed that they were taken aback by this unexpected response. The logging company may be hesitant to retain your services if there is excessive chatter, Williams remarked. In that case, I shall seek out alternative employment. There is no other work, Jonas. Not in this place. Not during the winter months. Jonas sensed the gravity of their words. Deprived of his position at the logging camp, he found himself without means to provide for Sarah and the infant. The chill of winter approached, and the urgency for funds to secure food, medicine, and essential supplies grew ever more pressing. As he lingered on his porch, gazing at the men who had once been his friends, Jonas came to a significant realization. Their camaraderie was bound by stipulations. With acceptance, there was a cost to bear, and that cost was forsaking the woman who had infused more happiness into his existence in 3 months than he had experienced in 2 decades. I truly appreciate you coming all this way to warn me, Jonas said at last. However, my response remains a firm no. I refuse to send my wife away, nor will I abandon my home. From his vantage point by the window, he caught a glimpse of Sarah, her figure partially concealed behind the curtain. Her expression was one of fear, and a surge of anger welled up within Jonas. Their petty gossip cast a shadow of fear over a pregnant woman, revealing the depths of their small-mindedness. Less than text, consider your actions carefully, Jonas, Bradley remarked. The chill of winter approaches. That girl will require medical attention when her moment arrives. It is not possible to offer that in solitude here. I will take care of it. What if something were to go awry? What if she were to perish? What if the young one were to perish? Is your pride truly worth that? The words struck Jonas with the force of tangible blows. He had endeavored to push those possibilities from his mind, yet Bradley's words rang true. Sarah, petite in stature, was embarking on the journey of motherhood for the very first time. There's a possibility that things may not unfold as intended. Misfortunes unfolded, particularly amidst the untamed wilds. Yet, as he gazed at Sarah's reflection in the window, Jonas arrived at his decision. We'll take our chances, he declared. The trio of men exchanged glances once more. With a casual shrug, Bradley dismissed the moment. It's your final farewell, Jonas. Let it not be said that we did not make an effort to assist. As they turned their horses and rode off into the distance, Jonas remained solitary on his porch, watching the first genuine flakes of snow begin to descend. Heavy, damp flakes poised to transform the mountain trails into perilous sheets of ice in mere days. With a gentle push, Sarah swung the door open and ventured into the world beyond. What was it that they desired? It's nothing important, Jonas said, draping his arm around her shoulders. Yet as the snow continued to descend with increasing intensity, an unspoken understanding settled between them. Winter would challenge them in ways they had not anticipated. The baby was expected in the spring, yet that moment felt like an eternity ahead. Months stretched on, filled with cold and solitude, and the haunting reality loomed that when Sarah's moment arrived, they might find themselves utterly alone. That night, as they nestled in bed, the wind howled around the cabin, and Sarah's voice broke the silence, reaching out into the darkness. Perhaps they hold the truth. Perhaps a return to town is in order. No, Jonas declared with conviction. We remain united. No matter what lies ahead, we will confront it side by side. Yet, in the shadowy confines of his cabin, as winter's chill encroached upon them, Jonas found himself grappling with the unsettling thought that he might have just committed the gravest error of his existence. William McKenna's horse charged into the yard, a force of nature akin to lightning striking the tallest tree. Jonas let his axe slip from his grasp. Upon hearing the furious hoofbeats, he realized that trouble had once more tracked them down. From the vantage of the kitchen window, he observed Sarah's complexion pale, reminiscent of newly fallen snow. Her hands trembled as she clutched the table, her rounded belly hindering her swift movements. With more force, McKenna's voice resonated through the clearing, akin to the powerful roar of a hungry bear. Come out here. We have matters to attend to. Jonas ambled deliberately toward the mounted figure. the squelch of spring mud beneath his boots punctuating the stillness of the moment. From behind, the sound of Sarah's sharp intake of breath drifted in through the open window. The tiny being within her is likely stirring with vigor. She consistently emitted that sound whenever the little one became restless. Dr. Hartwell had cautioned them that infants possess an uncanny ability to perceive their mother's trepidation, and at this moment, Sarah's fear was palpable enough to envelop them both. McKenna appeared utterly disheveled. His garments hung in disarray, soiled and frayed, while his beard had blossomed into a wild, unruly tangle. The shadows beneath his eyes revealed to Jonas that this man had been deprived of restful slumber for what felt like an eternity. Yet the most troubling aspect were his hands. They trembled like leaves caught in a tempest, and Jonas understood that it signified McKenna had succumbed to the bottle once more. "What is it that you seek in this place?" Jonas inquired, maintaining a composed and tranquil tone. Years spent in the company of perilous trees had imparted invaluable lessons to him. The terror could extinguish life more swiftly than any descending limb. "Desire?" McKenna's laughter echoed, yet it carried no joy. "I seek what is just. The girl I sold you has proven to be nothing but a source of trouble. Behold her, as large as a house, carrying another man's child. You've been wronged, Whitmore, and I believe you're entitled to some compensation." Jonas sensed a surge of anger swell within him, akin to the intense heat radiating from a blazing inferno. "Sarah is now my wife. What transpired in the past holds no significance for me now. Is it of no consequence?" McKenna unleashed a glob of saliva into the earth beneath her feet. "The child she bears might have ties to any number of individuals. Perhaps it was the blacksmith's lad, perpetually lurking nearby. Perhaps it was that traveling salesman who passed through last summer. Could very well belong to me, for all you are aware." The words struck Jonas with the force of a sudden blow. He caught the sound of Sarah's sharp intake of breath from within the cabin, and in that moment, he understood she was absorbing every dreadful word that hung in the air. This was precisely what she had dreaded, that her history would resurface to harm those she had come to cherish. "You're lying," Jonas said, though his voice emerged softer than he intended. McKenna grinned, a predatory smile that spoke of triumph over vulnerability. "Am I?" "Inquire with her directly. Proceed. Inquire of your beloved wife about the true identity of the father. Observe whether she can meet your gaze and speak the truth." Within the confines of the cabin, the sound of Sarah's sobs reached Jonas's ears. Gentle, muffled cries that shattered his heart into countless fragments. He had listened to her cries before, during the moment she revealed her pregnancy, on those frigid winter nights, and in her moments of doubt about her abilities as a mother. Yet, this was unlike anything else. This was the echo of a life unraveling. Men began to assemble at the periphery of the clearing. Jonas spotted Tom Brennan, along with a few of the other loggers. They must have trailed McKenna to this spot, lured by the clamor as if it were a beacon in the night. Their expressions revealed a delight in the unfolding drama, eager for the juicy tidbits they could share throughout the town, igniting a fervor like a blazing fire. "Even if what you're saying is true," Jonas said with measured caution, "it doesn't change anything. Sarah remains my wife. The small being within her will forever remain my offspring." "Is it your little one?" McKenna let out another laugh. This moment was so intense that he almost tumbled from his steed. "You utter simpleton! That child is bound to emerge resembling neither you nor your partner, and soon enough, the entire town will be aware that you've been outsmarted." Tom Brennan advanced, a sly grin playing on his lips. "Perhaps McKenna has a valid perspective. Perhaps it would be wise to consider stepping back before you find yourself further entangled." Jonas surveyed the circle of men, their eyes fixed on him as if he were a spectacle to behold. These were individuals he had stood shoulder to shoulder with for countless years, companions with whom he had broken bread and offered a hand during their own times of distress. They lingered in anticipation, eager to witness his downfall, poised to broadcast his disgrace across the expanse of the land. "Leave my land," Jonas said softly. McKenna inclined his body, drawing closer in his saddle. "Could you repeat that? Leave my property at once, all of you." With every word, Jonas's voice resonated with increasing strength. "Sarah is my wife, a choice I made with intention. The child is mine, for I shall nurture it. Should any of you find issue with that, feel free to address it with my axe." The menace lingered in the atmosphere, reminiscent of wisps of smoke curling from a campfire. Jonas had never considered himself a fighter, Yet 17 years of wielding an axe had forged muscles capable of breaking a man's ribs if the need arose. The loggers shifted uneasily, exchanging glances, their initial eagerness to engage in the confrontation waning. Yet McKenna stood her ground. He dismounted his horse and approached Jonas, drawing near enough for Jonas to catch the scent of whiskey on his breath. $50 more, McKenna declared. That is precisely what I desire for keeping the details of the woman you chose to marry a secret from the entire town. For $50, I'll remain silent about her past endeavors before your arrival. Jonas gazed into McKenna's bloodshot eyes, and a wave of unease washed over him. This transcended mere financial concerns. This tale revolves around a man shattered by his own decisions who sought to shatter those around him as well. McKenna found herself stripped of all she once held dear. His farm, his reputation, his daughter's respect, all of it was at stake, and now he sought to pull Jonas into the depths alongside him. No, Jonas replied, his tone unembellished. McKenna's face flushed with the vibrant hues of a sunset. Oh, so you believe you can simply refuse my request? That aligns perfectly with my thoughts. Jonas advanced, and in a surprising turn, it was McKenna who retreated. You traded your daughter to settle your gambling debts. You seized my funds and departed, casting no glance over your shoulder. Your desire for more money stems from an inability to reconcile with your past actions. Such words are not meant for our exchange. McKenna's hand glided toward the knife sheathed at his belt. With a swift motion, Jonas seized McKenna's wrist just as the knife was about to escape its sheath. Years spent gripping axe handles had forged his hands into instruments of strength, as unyielding as iron traps. McKenna's eyes widened, a mixture of astonishment and dread flickering across her face. Pay attention, Jonas murmured, his tone chillingly calm. You will mount that steed once more and gallop into the distance. Should you dare to set foot on my land once more, you shall not depart unscathed a second time. Are you able to comprehend my thoughts? McKenna struggled to break free, yet Jonas's hold remained unyielding. Surrounding them, the other men observed in hushed stillness, a dawning awareness settling in that this was not the effortless diversion they had anticipated. At last, McKenna gave a nod of agreement. Jonas loosened his grip, and McKenna staggered back, his hands instinctively moving to soothe the crimson imprints left by Jonas's fingers. This is far from finished. McKenna grumbled under his breath as he swung himself back onto his horse. Indeed it is, Jonas responded. He observed McKenna as she rode off, trailed by the disheartened loggers who had anticipated a more thrilling spectacle. Once they had departed, Jonas shifted his gaze toward the cabin. Sarah lingered in the doorway, tears cascading down her cheeks, one hand resting gently on her belly, cradling the life that blossomed within her. I'm sorry, she whispered. I deeply regret that you had to endure those words. Jonas approached her, enveloping her in his embrace, as he felt the gentle flutter of the baby against his chest. Do not apologize for his venom. It holds no significance for me. Yet, as the words left his lips, a flicker of doubt danced in Jonas's mind, questioning their authenticity. McKenna's accusations had sown seeds of doubt that could flourish, regardless of Jonas's desires. Sarah's screams sliced through the pre-dawn darkness, sharp and piercing, reminiscent of a saw blade cutting through fresh timber. Jonas shot up in bed, fully alert, his heart pounding against his chest like a caged creature desperate for freedom. Beside him, Sarah bent at the waist, her hands gripping her abdomen tightly. The moment has arrived, she inhaled sharply, caught in the throes of agony. The moment has arrived, the baby is on its way. Jonas had meticulously prepared for this moment for months, yet as it arrived, his mind felt as empty as a pristine sheet of paper. He emerged from the depths of slumber, nearly toppling over his own boots as he navigated the shadows. His hands trembled as he ignited the oil lamp, sending flickering shadows waltzing across the cabin walls. I must contact Dr. Hartwell, he declared, his hand already grasping his coat. Time is of the essence. Sarah's voice emerged, cutting through the air, breathless and sharp. The sensation of the baby shifting downward is palpable. It's unfolding at an alarming pace. Outside, the initial notes of birdsong began to fill the air, yet within the cabin, time flowed as slowly as molasses. Jonas guided Sarah to the bed they had thoughtfully arranged with fresh sheets and towels. He had perused Dr. Hartwell's medical tomes, seeking to grasp the necessary action should the baby arrive before assistance could reach him. Yet, immersing myself in the written word about birth paled in comparison to witnessing the woman I adored battle through each overwhelming surge of agony. Sarah's visage was as wan as the dawn fog, yet her gaze blazed with unwavering resolve. In the pauses between contractions, she seized Jonas's hand with a grip strong enough to shatter walnuts. "Tell me about the crib again," she whispered, attempting to divert her mind from the pain that was gathering, ominous and heavy, like a summer storm. Jonas clasped her hand tightly and began to speak, his voice unwavering despite the turmoil churning within him. "It is crafted from the most exquisite piece of pine I could discover. It was sanded to a silky finish, allowing a butterfly to alight upon it without a care, and I etched delicate flowers along the borders, reminiscent of those blooming in your garden." Another contraction surged through Sarah, her back arching off the bed in a moment of raw intensity. Jonas stood by, a silent witness to her suffering, feeling utterly helpless and yearning to absorb even a fraction of her pain. Every ounce of his strength, every moment of toil, culminated in this singular act, grasping her hand and whispering words of courage into the silence. The sun ascended, casting a golden and rosy hue upon the cabin walls. Jonas became oblivious to the passage of time, his attention solely on Sarah's rhythmic breaths and the reassuring phrases imparted by Dr. Hartwell. "You're doing wonderfully. It's almost here, just a little more." In an instant, the world transformed. Sarah's eyes widened in astonishment, mingled with a hint of trepidation. "Something is amiss," she gasped. "I am unable to proceed. It simply doesn't sit well with me." Jonas felt a chill seep into his veins, as frigid as the waters of a winter creek. Dr. Hartwell had foreseen this moment, cautioning them about Sarah's delicate stature, the precarious position of the baby, and the myriad of potential disasters that could unfold with assistance so far out of reach. "What is it that you require from me?" Jonas inquired, struggling to suppress the rising tide of panic in his voice. Sarah clutched his hand with an intensity that spoke volumes. "Please assist me in sitting up. I believe the baby is stuck." Jonas steadied her as she fought to shift her position, droplets of sweat forming on her forehead despite the crispness of the morning air. He observed her fatigue deepening, each contraction draining her more than the one before. "I can see the head," Jonas said suddenly. A delicate crown of dark hair emerged, a truth unmistakable. "Sarah, I can see our little one." The word "our" slipped from his lips unbidden, yet Jonas infused it with every ounce of his essence. Whatever McKenna had uttered, whatever uncertainties had infiltrated his thoughts throughout the lengthy night, vanished the instant he beheld that delicate head striving to emerge into existence. He implored, one final, mighty effort. With every ounce of strength she could muster, Sarah pressed on, her face flushed with exertion. Jonas stood in awe as the head appeared first, followed by delicate shoulders, and then, in a torrent of fluid and blood that sent his mind reeling, the whole baby slid into his eager grasp. In that fleeting instant, silence enveloped the world entirely. The tiny being rested motionless and pale in Jonas's hands. So diminutive and exquisite, it resembled a figurine sculpted from soap. Jonas felt his heart freeze in his chest as he awaited any indication of life. In that moment, the young child's mouth parted, releasing a sound so exquisite that it resonated through the cabin. A delicate, fierce wail that proclaimed to all that this tiny being was undeniably alive and thoroughly displeased with the chill and dampness surrounding them. Could it be? Sarah inhaled sharply, straining to catch a glimpse beyond her rounded midsection. "It's a girl," Jonas murmured, his voice heavy with emotion, the tears streaming down his face catching him by surprise. "She is flawless, Sarah, truly flawless." He swaddled the infant in the gentle embrace of the blanket that Sarah had meticulously crafted from remnants of her cherished dresses. The young girl's eyes fluttered open, a vivid blue reminiscent of a summer sky, and appeared to gaze directly at him, her face etched with a look of deep concentration. As Jonas cradled the little child in Sarah's arms, he examined the delicate features for any hint of resemblance to the men McKenna had spoken of. Yet all he could perceive was the resolute tilt of Sarah's chin and his own azure eyes reflecting back at him, filled with curiosity rather than trepidation. "Hello, little one," Sarah whispered, her finger gently brushing against the baby's cheek. "I am your mother, and this is your father. Our anticipation to finally meet you has been building for quite some time." It emitted gentle, plaintive sounds reminiscent of a kitten in search of its mother. As Sarah unfastened her dress to nurse, Jonas sensed a profound stillness enveloping him, a sense of fulfillment he had never known in his 34 years of life. "What name shall we bestow upon her?" Sarah inquired, her gaze fixed on their daughter's delicate fist as it danced in the air. Jonas reflected on the arduous winter they had endured, the uncertainties that had plagued them, and the fleeting instant when he feared he might lose them both. "Grace," he said at last, her name lingering in the air. Sarah beamed, the first genuine smile Jonas had witnessed from her since McKenna's visit. "Grace Whitmore, it resonates beautifully." With the morning sun pouring through the cabin windows, Jonas embraced his wife and daughter, awestruck by the swift transformation of their lives. Yesterday, he found himself a man grappling with uncertainties and facing a barrage of accusations. Today, he embraced the role of a father, observing his miracle as it breathed, stretched, and explored the world with each delicate movement. Outside, the Oregon pines danced softly in the breeze, and Jonas felt as if they were murmuring songs of welcome for the latest addition to their woodland kin.